All right, good evening. Welcome to Grand Blanc Township Board of Trustees meeting for September 24th. And Mr. Guzak, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So good evening. We'll start the meeting with the approval of the consent agenda and the regular agenda.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Okay, is there support?
Support, good discussion.
Okay. Mr. Mansour, discussion?
Yep, under operational issues, could we add a line item to consider dates for budget review?
We actually are going to, okay, we can put that as a discussion item. I think we have some answers for you. So we'll add C and make that discussion on.
We're still with that, right?
Setting
Budget.
dates for the budget.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, any other amendments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we've approved the consent agenda. Go to future positioning. Mr. Adkins is not with us this evening due to some business he has to take care of. Just to mention on the streets and roads, something that I had a meeting with the Genesee County Road Commission, the Roads and Bridges Advisory Board. Two things that they would like the township to consider, and we'll probably have to ask our legal counsel to give us some guidance and maybe look this over the next month or two. But one of the things that they would like us to consider is that, I don't know that we've had this issue, but other municipalities have, and they want the townships to consider putting in an ordinance that if somebody were to, let's say a business were to put in a stoplight or want one put in, that they're having difficulty that when that place goes out of business is dismantling that light, that stop light, and they're having to pay for it, whereas they would like the business to pay for taking out that light. So the suggestion amongst the other people in attendance at the meeting was, why not have the county put some type of escrow together that when a business puts in a stoplight, let's say that, you know, some big box store locates here and they want a stoplight put on one of our major streets, that they set up an escrow account, so if that business goes out of business, that county has some money to dismantle it, apparently it's a few $1,000s, and collect that money up front when, because most of the municipalities that were represented there felt that for us to collect money on behalf of somebody else's work might be a little bit more difficult. The other suggestion was to create a SAD, which also, you know, one of the municipalities said that it costs them $2,000, or they charge that if they're going to create a SAD, you know, as a special assessment district. So that was one of the issues that they had. The other issue was with regard to right-of-ways, that individuals that place things in the right-of-way, and I noticed that we skipped over public comment, so we'll do
at the end, that's fine.
We'll cover that in just a minute, but the other thing was items placed in the right-of-way, whether it's culverts that are incorrectly put in or other types of things, they would like to be able to charge individuals for removing those. You know, they give notice to the individual, the property owner. If those items aren't removed, then they remove them, but there's a cost to it, and they're unable to put it on the individual's tax bill, what have you, so they want to know if we would be willing, and more or less the same discussion came up that it really isn't our jurisdiction, so for us to put something on tax rolls would be difficult, but we would check with, you know, with our legal counsel for each municipality and see what the suggestions were for handling those things. I don't know that we have many of those issues in our township, but the point that I brought up was that I wouldn't want to deter, let's say that we do have a development that comes to our township and they need a light because of traffic reasons. I wouldn't want to deter that development because, hey, guess what? We can't figure out how we would deal with that light if that business were to ever go out of business. So we need to figure out a way. Ms. Lane?
Mr. Bennett, my question is, on Maple Road, there are red stoplights only at some of our intersections when you're going between Saginaw and Vassar. That's a red stop.
Flashing light.
Right.
Okay.
The other type of light would be a traffic signal. So did they designate to you whether it was these flashing red lights or a traffic signal that was installed?
They were talking in general terms, so it wasn't any specific area, but I mentioned that why not just put it on flashing mode instead, but they want to collect for electricity as well as, the dismantling of the light, but they said they could do that, but they want the ability to charge somebody for
So it's
removing the
traffic,
light.
it's a traffic signal rather
Right.
than a flashing red
Well,
light?
I imagine it could be either one. but
Okay.
They didn't specify.
All right.
So I don't know, I guess I would ask our legal counsel maybe to take a look at that and make some suggestions maybe too.
I'll do that.
Okay. Mr. Massey?
A comment in the form of a question.
Sure.
The biggest beneficial from something of the nature that you have described is the counter, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the county should pay. That's just a
Right.
comment.
I just don't want it to deter our development if they say, hey, we aren't going to put any more lights in, and we get somebody that wants to come here, and they say, well, the only way we're coming here is if we put a light in. So that's my only concern, is that I don't want it to be a stumbling block for development here. So, but I agree, it benefit, I mean, they don't want to be stuck with the bill, and we don't want to be stuck with the bill, so we got to figure out a way how we make the property owner pay for, what they are using.
I mean, based on, Mr. Chair, based
Yes.
on my experience riding throughout the township and other townships, I can count the lights on one finger, new lights, that I can recall, so I don't know why that's an issue.
Right. Well, it's more for like if a Meijer or, some large retailer moved in and they need a light at their intersection, and the road commission would put it in, but they would, want some kind of assurance that if they were ever to go out of business, who's going to pay to have that removed.
Oh, okay.
Also from the road commission, we're going to see a 5% increase next year in the amount of funding that we receive for 50/50 allocations. So we're going to look at about $194,940. And one of the things that's based on, 65% of it's based on mileage, meaning the number of road miles we have in our municipality, and 35% is based on population. They're basing this on 2010 census information, so hopefully I think we'll see quite a jump in our census numbers, and so that'll probably be even more money, but I doubt that census will be completed for another year or more, right? That's like,
It'll be more like 2022.
and
When they'll do it during March and April of next year, but results won't be finalized until more like 2022.
and I don't know if you were prepared to talk about it, but they need to update those numbers though in terms of, maybe, well, I'll let you, because it may affect our funding for roads as well.
Well, you want me to tell them now?
Sure.
On Friday, I had a young lady come into my office who was in charge of the out-county areas, and I was the first clerk she came to see, and she said, Kathy, I want to talk about the census. And I said, good, I was here in 2010. And she said, well, Grand Blanc Township was undercounted per the state census group that was looking over it by 20.5%. So we're aimed at trying to find all those people in 2020. And I said, well, I'm willing to help. But I said, are you sure? Because we went from 29,000 to 37,508. And that's a 26% increase, and that was the most of any municipality, so. But we had a long discussion, and we're both excited about making sure everybody gets counted in.
So they're going to
2020.
update those census numbers?
No, they don't update it. We have to get the people that are living in
But
our homes
the
to.
mistake?
No.
Okay.
No.
So there's no adjustment due to that?
No adjustment.
I thought maybe we could get ahead of it.
Doesn't go back either, right?
No,
Yeah, okay. I thought maybe there's some kind of adjustment. Okay.
no adjustment, just
All right.
making sure that they respond to those postcards they get in March.
Okay. The next one on the list for future position, Technology Village, we're waiting. Yep, we'll get through the
Okay.
future positioning, then
All
we'll
right.
get to Mr. Ert. Future positioning, Tech Village, we're waiting to hear from the developer, and supposedly they would like to meet with us in the coming weeks, so we're looking forward to that. Anything with planning and zoning, Mr. Mansur?
No, not necessarily. Again, we'll get a report on this at our second or
Right.
Thursday meeting, but you know, the master plan's going. We're taking it on the road. Been to a couple different venues to get input, and there are some cards that are going out, I think now, and we're going to be in the paper, I think, tomorrow.
Great.
So that's it's good to get that. I wanted to go back to the roads for just a minute.
Yes.
So I also, as part of the Metro Alliance meeting, I've come to understand that Genesee County has gotten the funding 5 safety projects, 5 safety-related projects, 4 of which are in the township. So we really put together whatever the necessary
Very good.
packages were to be successful there.
With the roads, you know, one of the things that probably most people don't realize, we probably do, but Mr. Lehman, about, what, 2 years ago, the road funding from the county for 50/50 was about $60,000.
Yeah.
So 2 years ago, our funding was $60,000. You know, actually, the meeting I was at with other townships, there was some concern from a couple of townships that, hey, you know, by increasing the amount of money you're giving us, the townships are having to come up with a lot more money
Yeah.
to match that money. And my thoughts were, hey, you don't have to use all of it, you know. I know we want to try and use every bit of it that we can. And so much so that, I mean, I even reached out to a few other municipalities and said, if you're not going to use your money this year,
Yeah.
why not allow us to use it? Unfortunately, what happens is they can loan it to another township, but you got to pay it back.
Sure.
So, but I mean, let's say you have a big project that you want to get some more money for. If somebody isn't using theirs, you can use it and then pay them back over the next year or what have you.
Sure.
If we pay them,
Yes, Mr. Thomas?
Supervisor Bennett, if we pay them back, does that have to be through those funds, or can we just write them a check?
You'd probably write them a check if you want. But the thing is, what I'm getting at is 2 years ago, we only had to come up with $60,000 because that's all we were matching. You know, I mentioned that we're looking at 190 some thousand.
195 almost.
Yeah, this next year, you know, that's coming out of our general fund, so that's money that we're pulling out. But again, we're fixing more lane miles. I think, hopefully we're fixing more lane miles of road than what we were before. So, with that, let's, I apologize for skipping over citizen comments. Mr. Ert,
Enter 72124 Road. I just have something very simple. I was looking through the agenda and I see some minutes there from Parks and Recs for August 15th.
yes.
And I noticed that Mr. Hester made a motion to go into executive session. They did. 5 yeses, 1 nay. And then they went on to executive session. I thought it was always kind of appropriate to say the reason you're going into executive session, not just going into a gathering and discussing something. I just thought maybe, you know, since you have 2 people on that board, that you might want to address that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ert. Okay. Seeing no other public comment, or maybe there is. Any other public comment? Okay. With that, we'll close public comment, and yes, Mr. Guzet.
Yes, I'd just like to add, you know, the Prairie House has their open house October 5th, so that's coming up, so just to forewarn people, I'm sure they'll see flyers, but
Well, one of the things with that is that they will be having an unveiling of the historic marker too.
right, so it's going to be, we want it to be a big event, so.
Yeah. Okay, with that, let's move on to operational issues. And,
They also started the work on vacation.
okay, good. Operational issues, and I've asked to put something on the agenda. I think, we have about 1 year left in our terms, all of us, and I know we tried to start down this path a little while ago, and that's basically to put together a strategic plan. We're looking at, lots of different things. We pulled our fire department in here. With the Parks and Rec, we've looked at how we're spending that millage money and what we want to do, and I know we've had a number of board members concerned that, before we spend any more money, we need to have some kind of strategic plan as to where we're going and what direction we have. So I reached out to a few municipalities around the state, and one person's name kept coming up over and over again, and I sent out the proposal. I've had a couple of conversations with him, and he seems extremely thorough in his work. One of the things that I wanted to make sure of is that I've seen strategic plans that are kind of pie in the sky that end up being very esoteric and look great on paper, but I wanted something that actually was a blueprint for what we can achieve in 6 months to a year. And that's exactly what this gentleman helps you put together. And it's not simply, hey, let's put a whole bunch of stuff on the wall and then vote on which things we want to try and prioritize. But he's worked, as I mentioned, with quite a few municipalities. In fact, I think I sent to everybody the proposal that actually lists some of them. I mean, everybody from Livingston County, Van Buren County Road Commission, Montcalm Road Commission, Joliet, Illinois, Plainfield, Illinois, Muskegon County Sheriff's Department, Tawas Police Department, City of Mount Pleasant, City of Plymouth. I mean, the list goes on. City of Saline, and some pretty respectable communities. City of Lowell, Tarpon Springs, Canton, Owasso. So both local and nationally known, municipalities. It is quite a commitment. I know that this isn't going to be something that we just get together for 3 hours and throw together a plan. I've given out, everybody has at their place, I think, a copy of the dates that we were looking at. I know Mr. Atkins has said that he would make himself available for the October dates. I don't know how those work for everybody. I don't know where he was at with the other dates, but the sooner we could get it on our calendar, the better. So I don't think, unless somebody's emailed me in the last few hours, I'm not sure if I've heard from anybody else yet. But any questions? I think, with the strategic plan, I think it does a couple of things, or many things, but two things that I would like to highlight is that I think, number one, the budgeting process. We talked about Parks and Rec, and where do we spend our money out there? We do need a strategic plan on what we're going to do with that park in terms of the work we want to do out there. I mean, we talked about even the color of the roof. What is our game plan for the park? So we need a strategic plan for that. But I think overall with the township, what are the things we would like Mr. Limita to focus on over the next, not only just the next year, but several years, but what do we actually want to accomplish in the next 6 months, 12 months? It also helps with the budgeting process so that Mr. Limita knows what are our priorities. Right now, pretty much, Mr. Limita came into this job basically, hey, we want to maintain our current service level and we want to pay down OPEB, right? Those are pretty much the only two strategies or strategic things that we've mapped out in concrete that we want to accomplish. And I think we need to have an overall comprehensive plan of what we do. I mean, we're working on a master plan for the township in terms of where we want things, what have you. But I think it's important that this board have a concrete plan on what we would like to accomplish and what we want departments to work on. Part of this plan, what we do is we come together, we put some things on paper and we send it back to department heads to actually take a look at it and say, hey, here's how much this would cost to do this, and then we get back together and say, here's what's doable. I've asked Mr. Limita to actually join me in one of the conference calls with Mr. Bender. Mr. Lehman, any comments on what you found? I know you've done a lot of strategic planning yourself for business, but what's your thoughts?
Obviously, I'm a big proponent of strategic planning. I've taught it, I've participated in a great deal of them. I've never worked with Mr. Bender, don't really know him, but I was impressed with the conversation that we had with him on the phone, the questions he asked, and realistically, the strategic planning process is designed to pick, 3 to 5 of the most important things that the board sees, and then developing a plan for how to accomplish those in the next 5 years. It's basically a 5-year plan of the 3 to 5 most important things, and I think it is very valuable from a budgeting perspective to know what the board would like to accomplish in 5 years, what are the most important priorities, and then helps us allocating funds on how to accomplish those goals.
Well, there's some things immediately that we want to start getting done in the next 6 to 12 months. So it's important that we get our ducks in a row on that. But there's also some things in the next 3 to 5 years that are major that we need to decide what direction we want to go in. So, for example, we've thrown out the idea of, do we want to build a new fire department building? Do we want to build a new DPW? If those are things that we want to look at, we need to spend some time looking at that and planning, and then also start looking at our budget projections and having Mr. Lehman map that out as far as what that looks like financially before we go down those paths. But I think it's just critical that we have something in writing that this board comes to a consensus on, that, hey, here's the 3 to 5 big things, and we're not talking about coming up with this huge list. What is it that we can get done in the next year, and what is it that we want to accomplish over the next 3 to 5 years? It also, I think, sends a message to our residents that we're doing more than just taking care of day-to-day business. We're looking out for where we want to go as a township. I know we're doing that with the DDA, we're doing it with our planning, but we also need to do it with what we're here, the business we're taking about, that we're not just maintaining services, but we're looking at how do we work into the future. So I don't know what everybody else's feeling is with regard to strategic planning, but if you, what is the saying? If you fail to plan, or if you're failing to plan, you're planning to fail. So, any thoughts? Mr. Mansour, any thoughts?
I'm a proponent of strategic planning.
Okay. Mr. Thomas?
I think the strategic plan should be in our utmost and foremost minds right now, and I would be all for us meeting as a group on a work day to look at the Parks and Rec and such.
Any thoughts on the proposal that I put forward?
I'm all for the strategic plan. Yeah.
So we need to figure out if you're in favor of the proposal, then we need to figure out some dates. Is that something we want to pursue, is this proposal?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I think right now, we probably should put this on hold. That's my thought right now. And come back and revisit it in another month or so. I think that's the best way to do this. Because here's what I'm thinking.
These dates won't be available in a month, I can tell you that.
Well-
We'll be starting the next year.
Well, I see a lot of dates on here that you got. I wouldn't be available anyway.
Okay.
But the point I'm trying to make is that we need to get through the budget process first. Okay? And then once we get through the budget process, we can work out some other things that are very, very important. And I know most people like to say, well, let's get this first before the budget. But we don't want to put the cart before the horse.
Well, I think this fits in with the budget because, for example, the parks, if we're looking at, we want to pave the roads in there, we've got a budget. If we want to put lights in there, if we want to do something with the entryway, it factors into the budget. Same with, depending on what our long-term plan is for the fire department, it's going to factor into it. So I think we can do both, to be honest. The the budgeting, I know that Mr. Limita, I met with the department heads with Mr. Limita, and we talked about on October 8th, I believe it is, that we are going to have the department heads here. They're going to present to each of you briefly, and then we're going to decide which groups we want to meet with in depth after that. But we're prepared and to do that. So I don't see the two conflicting.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I side with trustee Massey on postponing this at this time.
Okay, these dates are not going to be available, so
I understand.
we'll be into next year before we do anything, if we use this individual anyways. So, okay, well, I guess if we don't want to do a strategic plan, then I guess we'll put it on ice. But let's not hold up projects because we don't have a strategic plan. So when we bring projects about the Parks and Rec and we say we don't have a plan, I'm not spending any money, I'm going to not be happy with that.
I understand.
Mr. Chair, let me say this. I think as much talk, a much proposal, a much preparation we have done for the Parks and Rec, I think we should have something in place already.
We have not discussed anything in place, what our priorities are there.
Well, I think what we're faced with, that's my main reason for putting this on hold. We need some priorities in place before we go into a meeting to come up with a strategic plan. I don't want to go into a meeting and we sat there and spent an hour on talking about what do we really want to do with Parks and Rec. I'm not for that again. I'm for going into a meeting that we have a vision how we want to do Parks and Rec, okay? Now, that'd be always tweaking, okay, to any plan. But we're not sitting there and I'm discussing something, I'm just going to use somebody with Earl about Parks and Recs. He has a different vision than I do. I hope he doesn't mind me raising.
Well, that's the idea of the strategic plan, is to create a vision of what we want and then put together what are the steps to create that.
Yes, but that's something as I read this, I'm not at liberty to say
Okay.
what it is that we need to hold off right now.
All right.
Yes, at least for another month, and put it back on the agenda after another
All
month.
right.
Okay?
Okay. Future agenda items? With that, I think I'd like to, Mr. Laddie?
Well, I'm just going down your agenda. So you have item A, operational, board will consider a motion to approve the proposal.
Okay, yes, we also had discussion on budget dates.
Well, yeah, I know, but so you're not, there's no motion to
Right,
approve the proposal.
right,
Okay, so that item has fallen
yes.
off the agenda.
Same with setting dates.
Okay. So those two things have
Right,
failed for lack of a proposal.
correct. So discussion on budget dates. Mr. Mansour?
We talked about October 8th to get the process started. Then maybe, I kind of like the idea of having, breaking it up into 2 or 3 sessions. I don't know, the dates that maybe were talked about here for the strategic plan may be opened up now. And we can use those depending on when the calendar says that we have to be through it. So,
What is the drop dead date?
yeah, when is it's the beginning of, like, basically December, right?
Basically, go
Yeah,
ahead,
the
Mr.
board
Laddie.
has to adopt a budget before the end of the year, so
Okay.
you have till December 15th, 15 days before the end of the year.
Okay.
If we wanted to,
Mr. Thomas?
if we wanted to ask the state for an extension, that's always an option too, correct?
I would be opposed to it, but
No, I'm just asking.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's possible or not. Do you know, Mr. Lemina?
We don't need one.
Well, we never
I would be
extended.
totally opposed
Have we
to
ever
it.
extended?
I would not be in favor of it.
Right, neither would I.
Well, I'm just asking a question. I didn't say I was in favor, of it. I'm asking a
Okay.
question.
So,
I don't know the answer to
Mr.
that question, I've
Laddie?
never seen it done.
I don't know the answer to that either.
Yeah.
I can find out.
The Budgeting Act requires that the board adopt, because we don't have any authority to spend, so there's no extension of the budget. Ours ended. There's no authority to spend any money once the budget has ceased to exist.
So
We
I
can.
would just throw out there that the 31st, October, the 1st and 2nd would be options, at least as far as I'm concerned, to meet on this. I'm just throwing that out there for the board
October
consideration.
31st?
Huh?
That's
October,
Halloween.
I would have to get back and
Okay.
I'd have to check the schedule.
that's Halloween. Halloween?
Well, let's send out these dates and see, so what's the wish though? I mean, we're going to have each of the department heads come before us on the 8th.
Okay.
So what are you thinking?
May-
Do
maybe
we want
we-
to get through that and
Yes,
see where we're at?
exactly right, exactly right. So maybe we can go from there, take a look at the top 3, maybe departments, and then just ask them to come in for a little deeper dive.
All right, Mr. Lehman?
So for the board's expectations, like I sent out, I think it was on just before the September, before we sent the budget out, August 31st or 30th. And I put in there that the board will hear a presentation with all department heads October 8th. What we intend to do is, it'll be a brief PowerPoint. We'll walk you through the main objectives, challenges, goals, and then by department, you'll hear each department head give you a broad overview of how they feel the budget accomplishes the goals that they have set for 2020. And it's really designed as a big, broad 10,000-foot view overview, and then by each department. So that is a good opportunity from there to know. There may be some departments that you have all the information that you need by the presentation and what's in the budget itself, and it will help the board define which ones actually need additional follow-up. So I think that works, where then you'll have a much better idea. You can always set aside for every one of your regular meetings a certain, an agenda item for the budget, and spend an hour in each, agenda through as well, plus the additional dates then, like Trustee Mansour is suggesting, so that we can make sure that I can give my department heads advance notice to make sure that they're here to answer your questions during those budget sessions as well.
Okay. All right, so we'll wait till the 8th and
Wait.
figure out what we're going to do. With that, I don't know that we have any future agenda items anybody want to bring up, but I'll ask. Okay. Yeah, Mr. Thomas?
When I talked to Trustee Atkins, he asked me to speak to the Parks and Rec Task Force.
For an
And
agenda item or what?
no, to have a meeting
To have a meeting? Okay.
next week, if at all
All right.
possible.
Okay. We can probably do that. I've asked, Mr. Laddie?
Well, there are possibly 2 issues that we may want to consider in a quick executive session, if the board will consider it. One involves the possibility of a property purchase by the township, and then the other involves a question regarding our ongoing discussions concerning the fire department and the distribution of the property. And so if you're willing to consider those 2 quick items in an executive session, I think that might be helpful.
So, money.
I would be willing to make a motion to go into executive session to discuss a possibility of property purchase and continued discussion on the distribution of property related to the fire department.
Okay. Is there support?
Support?
Ms. Lanning?
Mr. Mansour?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Guzak?
Yes.
Mr. Massey?
Yes.
Myself, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll start in 3 minutes and
Oh, it's